I want to personally thank Fiat Chrysler for inviting me to be the keynote speaker at this year's 21st Annual Virtual Matchmaker, as I want to personally commend the leadership of FCA, including its president and CEO, Mike Manley, Lottie Holland, Marty Horneck, Bashar Khalad, Greg Hawkins, and the entire purchasing, supply chain, and supplier diversity family. It is an honor to speak with each of you. As the 12th national president of the National Business League, the oldest and largest trade association for black businesses in the entire country, with more than 120,000 members nationally, 365 local chapters across the country, celebrating 120 years of service after being founded in 1900 by the legendary Booker T. Washington, who in fact message is more relevant today than it was 120 years ago. This is a pivotal point in American history, as we are faced not only with a health crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also an economic crisis, where social distancing has also become economic distancing, and where face-to-face business has become a virtual innovation and digital commerce center for exchange. This is truly a time of uncertainty, as racial unrest and rebellion has once again sparked a global outcry screaming, "Black Lives Matter." Due to the continued unarmed murders of black men and women shaking up the world, the public and private sector is now ready to intentionally move towards real racial equity and inclusion in the age of the solution revolution. America's original economic sin began with the enslavement and involuntary free labor of black bodies more than 400 years ago, helped to birth the nation's first economy, while at the same time crippling the country's true economic potential by excluding black Americans from participating in the nation's economic prosperity with the same rights afforded to white men and women for hundreds of years. When the first indentured servants arrived in 1619, not only was there no such thing as race in terms of skin color, there were no white people there, but rather men and women on the same equal footing, including black and indigenous people of the land, many of which developed and maintained America's long tradition before European settler class arrived. Black people owned land, married white women, white men married black and indigenous women. Some went into business together and even purchased their complete freedom. And while being afforded the same rights as all humans looking to make a life in the newly settled land. As a researched fact, race didn't come into existence until the late 17th century. This is where you began to see the invention of race embedded into society and our policies as a means of socio-economic control by the white ruling class elite, offering privileges to poor whites as a perceived class upgrade over the poor black slaves and indentured servants and indigenous natives of high melanated posterity to maintain their economic dominance and power. Since the early invention of race, white privileges have enforced the myth of racial superiority to maintain the ruling class domination over ordinary people of color throughout American history. This in turn has led to many great rebellions against this mythological, not biological, creation that has served as a dysfunctional economic model, forcing black Americans to fight for freedoms afforded to many termed minority groups today. Not only did black Americans fight for their freedom off the plantations of America, but have endured more than 150 years of black codes, which excluded blacks from the economic mainstream of society during the Reconstruction period. Then came Jim Crow segregation that terrorized the black communities with hatred and lynching and mass destruction of businesses and communities. Then the fight for civil rights, as black men and women marched and challenged America's racist and bigoted past in search for freedom for all human beings. And 50 years later, after fighting for the right to vote and equal citizenship, we find ourselves still left with the vestiges of the country's ugly past. But today, we have a renewed vision that out of the devastation of COVID-19 and the racial unrest sparking this land, this is an opportunity to right the wrongs of the past and reimagine a world without racial injustice and exclusion. It is because of the automotive industry, in particular, Fiat Chrysler, that began to create a way for supplier diversity and opportunities for Black and minority communities to be valued members of the supply chain many, many years ago. And it will be because of the automotive industry again with the leadership of FCA that will bring about racial equity and inclusion going forward. Yes, folks, this is the solution revolution. By the year 2043, some say 2032, the majority of this country will be Black and brown and also the future majority consumer. This is an opportunity as we recover from COVID-19 and become intentional to end the racial injustices of yesterday, not just platitudes in press conferences, but true equity and inclusion, and measurable in all aspects of life, including an equal opportunity economy, giving Black and brown communities incentive to develop, grow, and scale their businesses throughout the supply chain network. The challenge started with Mike Manley's call to action to stand together, to be a part of the solution to shift our society, to stand against racism and violence and create equitable opportunities for those marginalized, isolated, and disadvantaged in the marketplace just because of the color of their skin. Let us together in solidarity rid this world of this invented, failed economic policy called racial bias that limits our ability to live in the true American dream while creating a world where a person's business and the business's ability is valued and developed rather than oppressed based on an invented concept called race that is no longer relevant in today's economy. In closing, take every opportunity today to engage the unfamiliar, the least expected, and the uniqueness that makes us all different as one human race. Let us join the solution revolution, where one day every human being and their enterprise is free to grow, hire, and innovate into the future world of tomorrow, regardless of race, creed, color, sexual orientation, or bias. This time, together in solidarity, we shall correct the wrongs of the past because we created racial equity and inclusion for the future. Thank you to the FCA family and all of its global partners, and enjoy yet another opportunity to become a part of the solution revolution in the age of racial equity and inclusion. Enjoy today's unprecedented virtual conference full of commerce opportunities, but more importantly, diverse companies creating a future where solutions are the revolution.